Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial where I'll be teaching you how to send emails with Celery in Django. We're also going to make use of Redis as well to act as our message or our task broker to mitigate all of our tasks. Alright, so let's get started. So as you can see here, I'm on the official Celery documentation here. So this is Celery to Django documentation to be more specific. And just to give you a bit of information here, of course you can read this at your own leisure, Celery is basically a distributed task queue that is going to allow you to offload any work from your application and then to go ahead and schedule these tasks. So to actually make use of Celery, we need a few things. So first of all, we're going to need an application. So we're going to use Django to integrate Celery. And then of course what we're going to need, of course, is a Celery server running. Now, don't worry, this can be on any kind of operating system. This can be on Windows, this can be on Linux, or it can even be on Mac. And then we are going to make use of a task broker to mitigate all of our tasks. So this can either be a RabbitMQ or it can be Redis. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be making use of a Redis-based instance to act as our task broker. All right. So those are just some of the small things I wanted to cover before we actually dive deep and further in. All right. Now, regarding all of the links that I use in this video tutorial, I will share them down below in the description, and I'll do it in order as I work through the video tutorial for it to make more sense to you. So that will be the better way. So just check under the description. I'll add in a whole bunch of links for everything that I use. All right. So just keep that in mind. All right. Right, so let's get started. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a very simple web application with Django. Of course, I will include timestamps of this video, so if you want to skip ahead to the relevant chapter, you're more than welcome to do just that. All right, but for those of you that want to follow this from scratch with me, let's get started. So what I like to do first of all is head over to my desktop. I always like to keep a clean desktop here, and I just like to create a normal folder here, and I like to call that dev. Next thing, I go ahead and open up my command prompt, so my CMD. Just want to size this up properly so it's clearer for you guys. Okay, and just type CLS regularly just to clear this up. Now I want to go into my dev folder, so I'm going to say cd desktop. So now I'm on my desktop. Then cd dev, so I'm now within the dev folder. Now, of course, we can clear this up. Now, I just want to mention, you're more than welcome to start a Django project your way. You don't have to do it the same way I'm doing it. This is just how I do it. You can, of course, do it your own way. It's really up to you, okay? So please do not feel like you need to do it my way. You can do it your own way. It's really up to you. As long as you follow the general idea, then that's perfect. Okay, so now that we're in that folder, we need to install the package for creating virtual environments. So that will be pip install, and virtual env will be the package name. Now, generally, we shouldn't install packages globally when we're creating applications in Django, or any application for that matter. But in this case, we need to install it globally so we can actually make use of this virtual environment package and actually create a virtual environment. But generally, you shouldn't actually go ahead and install packages globally. Okay, but in this case, it's perfectly fine, and this is the only way. So let's go ahead and install the virtual environment package. So as you can see, I already have it installed, so that's fine. So let's clear this up. And what we can do now is we can actually create our virtual environment in our folder dev. So I'm going to say virtual env, and I'm going to name my virtual environment venv. You can call this anything you want. You can say venv1. You can call this env. It's really up to you. So I'm just going to say venv. So just create that virtual environment. So this shouldn't take too long. This should just take a moment. So let's just wait for this. Okay, if I feel this takes too long, I'll pause the video so we don't lose time here and we keep the video as efficient as we can. All right, there we go, that's great. So now to test it, we can just say venv, so that's what I named it. And then we can say \scripts \activate. And if you see your virtual environment name, the name that you associated with your virtual environment, if it's in parentheses, then we can now see that we was in it because we activated our virtual environment and we was in it. And if you want to deactivate it, just go ahead and say deactivate. If you want to activate it again, go ahead and just do that. Now, a common command that I always use in all my videos is pip list, okay, because this lists all the packages within my virtual environment. Now, the first time that you actually go ahead and run this command here, it's going to take some time. So that took a while, so we can see all the packages in our virtual environment. And this is very helpful in keeping track and making sure that we don't install anything globally. So I always do this whenever I install a package, just to double check. So we can clear that up. And now we need to, of course, install Django. So we can say pip install Django. Now just make sure you're in your virtual environment, because if you're not, you're going to install this globally, and we don't want that. We want to install this in our virtual environment. Excuse me. So go ahead and install that. Now it can take a while for Django to be installed. So what I'm going to do is pause the video, and once that's done, we can move on to the next set of steps. All right. Great. So we can now see that Django is installed. Let's verify this. So let's clear this up. It's a bit messy. Say pip list, and let's take a look. All right, so we have Django and the packages associated with Django. So yeah, this is perfectly fine. So we can just clear this up. Great, so we're all ready to get started. So now we're in dev, and we can verify that our virtual environment folder is indeed within dev here. So let's open it up, and there it is. So this is our virtual environment folder. Just an important tip to remember, okay, make sure that you don't move your virtual environment anywhere. Keep it where it is, because this can lead to a lot of problems. So I'd highly recommend you leave it where it is, okay, because there is some hard code functionality. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's fine. Now what we need to do is create our Django project here in dev. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do here while in the dev directory, I always keep my virtual environment active. You can decide if you want to keep it off. Just make sure whenever you install a package that it's on. Okay, so we can say Django-admin start project, and I'm going to call mine elevate. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's type CLS, and we can actually say cd elevate, and we can head over into this project. So now if we open dev, okay, we are now going into elevate here, and we will be in this directory as you see here. Okay, so this is difficult, so we need to actually make use of we need to structure this out. So what I like to do is I like to make use of Visual Studio Code. So what I'm going to do is just open VS Code up here. Okay, so it should automatically find that folder, but if not, we can manually open it up. Okay, so it's not going to find it. Let's see. Okay, let's just wait for this. All right, so what we can do here, if you don't see that it opens up automatically, you can just go ahead and say File, Open Folder. Okay, head over to your desktop, click on Dev. And there we go. So we can see now we have structure, and this is a bit clearer. And we can now see we have our project Elevate. We have our Elevate folder here with settings.py, manage.py, our virtual environment folder. Everything is set and ready to go. Great. So what I usually do is I make use of the CMD for making use of my Python commands. But in this case, to make it easier, I'm going to make use of the inbuilt Visual Studio Code for running our terminal. Okay, I find that a bit easier to do, okay, because of the fact that we will be using the CMD for our Celery server. Okay, but I'll explain this in a later time. So what you can do is you can close your CMD for now and head over to Visual Studio Code. Right. So let's set up our Visual Studio Code terminal up here. So what we can do is instead of using the CMD in this case, we can head over to terminal, and we can just go ahead and say new terminal. Okay, so there we have it right down here. Now, if this is a bit small for you, I'm just going to zoom in so you can see. Okay, so we are within our terminal here, although there are a few things we need to just set up here. Now, there's many ways to do this. Like I said before, you can decide how you want to do it, how you want to run it and get started here. But what you can do in this case is remember that we're in Elevate and we want to call manage.py here just to make sure everything's working. So what we need to do, first of all, is since we're in dev, we need to activate our virtual environment. So what I'm going to do here is going to say venv /scripts /activate. Okay, there we go, it's been activated, and we can type in CLS, clear everything up. And let's head over to Elevate, so we can say cd elevate, clear this up. And what we can do now is we can go ahead and we can actually test our program. So let's see if our application is working. So now we can say Python manage.py run server. And let's go ahead and run that. Okay, there we go. So we can see it's working fine. So our server is now available at the following URL, which we can open up. And there we go. So Django is now working and it's been installed and everything's set. Now, before we move on further with the details, there's just something I want to mention here. So I'm just going to zoom out here. So there we have it. So I'm only going to be using this Visual Studio Code terminal here just to really run basic commands like run the Python server and migrate our database migration. That's all I'm really going to use this for, so don't worry too much about it. Okay, so that's that done. Next thing I want to mention is to set up your Python interpreter. So what you need to do is you can minimize this and head over to your dev folder here. Now, we need to set the path for our virtual environment. Now, this is not always necessary in Visual Studio Code. It's not always necessary, but there are certain packages in Django or in Python, to be exact, that require you to explicitly set the path to your virtual environment folder. Okay, I'm just doing this just for security. Of course, it's really up to you if you want to do it, but let's go ahead and do that. So what I usually do here is I just type in Control, Shift, and P on my keyboard. So Control, Shift, and P. So Control, Shift, P. And then we have a whole list of options here. So I like to go ahead and say Python select interpreter. Okay, and it says here enter interpreter path. So go ahead and click on this plus row here. So click on that. And now we need to enter the path. So what you can do is just minimize that. Head over to your dev folder. So let me do it from scratch. Head over to dev. Head over to your virtual environment. Here, you just want to copy that location. So Control C, so copy that location. And you want to paste in that interpreter path. And just go ahead now and just press enter on your keyboard. Okay, there we go. So if we press Control, Shift, and P again, and say select interpreter, we can now see that that was selected accordingly. All right. So make sure that you have that in place. Very important. So make sure you have that. We can now close this folder and just head back to our server, refresh, and everything's still okay. All right. So make sure you've got all of that in place. All right. So that's the basic setup. Right. So let's carry on configuring our Django web application. So the next thing that we need to do is head over to our Visual Studio Code terminal here. And I'm just going to make it bigger for you here so you can see, and just press Control C to just stop it for the moment and clear it up. So you can also type CLS just to clear your terminal. And what we want to do now is make sure we're in our virtual environment, in our project directory, and we want to create an app. So I'm going to say Django-admin start app, and I'm going to call it links. You can name it anything you want. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, there we go, set. So we can clear this up now. And let's go ahead and double check that it's there. So there's links, great, our app's there. So in the meantime, we can go ahead and just restart our server. So it's best to just keep it running. So let's run that there. Okay, and I'm just going to zoom out a bit here because it is quite zoomed in when we actually get to our Django application files. So what we can do now is just refresh, and okay, it's good. So what we need to do now is head over to our projects, settings.py. So in my case, Elevate. Head over to settings.py, and here under installed apps, you can go ahead and you can just add in links. Remember to add in your comma at the end there, very important, and make sure there's a trailing comma beforehand as well. All right. Okay, so once you've got that in place, you can close settings.py, and now we want to just configure our URLs. So here by links, we need to create a urls.py file here. So we're just going to say new file and say urls.py within my links app here. And what we need to do is just add a little bit of markup here for urls.py. We already have a views.py here, so we don't need to worry about that. So what I like to do here is I don't like to write the whole thing out. So I'm going to head over to Elevate and our main projects urls.py here, put them side to side. So here's our main project one, and here is the links here. So I'm just going to make use of some of the markup here. So just this here, actually. I'm going to copy that, head over to links and paste it in. So I don't need this path for the moment because it's not going to be applicable. So that's fine. So just borrow a little bit of code here. And what we want to do now is we want to connect this links urls.py in our app here to our project urls.py, so the main one here. So we want to connect all these URLs here that we have in links to Elevate. So we need to make use of an include function to actually carry this out. And now in your URL patterns, you can go ahead and say pass, and we can just leave this as an empty string. Since we're only going to have one app, it's fine. And now we need to say include. And within quotes, we can say links. So you need to reference your app name, .urls. And be sure to add a comma at the end there. And there we go. Everything's running fine. So let's refresh here. Okay, it's always a good test to refresh just to make sure. So we can now see we've connected all of our possible URLs that we decide to define or create here in links with Elevate in our main urls.py file. So it's now all good to go. All right, so make sure you've got this in place and that it's all set and ready. So we can now go ahead and close this up here. And what we can do is we can set up our first view in links. So we're going to go ahead and create a basic view. So I just want to take out this comment here. And I'm just going to return a basic HTTP response. So I'm just going to say from Django.http import HTTP response. And I'm going to create a view here called index. I'm going to pass in the request object. And what we can do is just return a basic HTTP response. And here I'm going to say hello world, so something very simple. And that's it. Now we need to actually connect this view to our URL. Right. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to set up our views here. So just below pass, we need to import our views.py file. So as we can see, it's in the same directory. So all we can do is we can say from .import views. Okay. Now if views was in another directory, we would have to put .. or / etc. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and set it up, our URL path. So we can say pass, and we can leave it as an empty string. And say views dot index. So we're referencing that view here. Then I always like to have a name attribute, and I'll leave that as an empty string as well, followed by a comma. So technically speaking, on our homepage here, it should change to hello world that we see right here. So let's go ahead and refresh the page, and there we go. So there we have our basic views and URLs all set up. So this is the basic Django project that you need to be up to at least. Okay, so that's what we need to get up to scratch for the moment. All right. Okay, so now that we have this all set and ready to go, let's move on. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually go ahead and install the Celery package. Okay. And we also need to install the Redis package. All right, so like I mentioned earlier on before, Redis is going to be our task broker for Celery, for all of our Celery tasks. So we need to install these two packages. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can head over to Visual Studio Code right down here. Let's turn off the server, zoom in a bit, and we can go ahead and install that as follows. So let's install Celery first. So copy that. Make sure you're in your virtual environment, and go ahead and install Celery. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so there's quite a couple things that it will install. So it shouldn't be too long, so let's just wait for that. And then we'll go ahead and install Redis once this has been completed. So let's just wait for that. Okay, so, okay, there we go. So let's clear this up, so CLS. And let's install Redis. Copy that and paste it in. Make sure again you're in your virtual environment. Okay, so this shouldn't be as long. There we go, great. And let's just say pip list, and let's just double check that the main two are there. It will have, of course, installed other packages along with it, which is fine, but let's just scroll up and see. So we have Redis here. Okay, that's fine. And let's carry on going with Celery. And we have Celery here. So this is the latest version that I'm using as of today. So make sure you have that all in place. And don't worry about these other packages. They all came along with Redis and Celery. For example, Combo is a part of Celery. So as you can see here, there are a lot of other packages, but don't worry, that's fine. So let's clear this up and let's just turn on our server again. Let's turn that on. Okay, that's fine. And let's zoom out. Okay, there we go. And of course we can just head over to our application, refresh. Okay, that's looking good. So make sure you have these two packages installed. All right, so we're now going to move on to the next part. So what you can do, I'm just going to close these up here. and we're going to go back to this documentation here for the Celery with Django integration. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to head over to Django, and we can close this view and URLs. And what we want to do is we want to create a celery.py file in Django. And then we're going to make use of the code that's here, and we're just going to paste that in. So let's go ahead and do the first thing. So very important here, make sure that you're in your main project here where settings.py is, and you want to create a new file here, and you can name it anything you want. I'm going to call it celery.py. So this is going to be like the manage.py area, or the main celery.py file, you could say, or the main execution for Celery. Go ahead and just add some lines. And what we're going to do here is just go ahead and paste in the following code here. So just have a look what I'm doing here. So the file will be under proj, and then celery.py. So we can go ahead and just copy all of this here and paste it in this celery.py file right here. Perfect. So make sure you've got that all in place. All right. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to point to the Celery instance. We need to point this, because this is effectively our Celery instance, which will be running soon enough. And we need to then point our Celery instance to our Django project, which it is in. So whatever your project is named, so mine is called Elevate, we need to change that on our lines here. So it will be line 6 and on line 8. So my project is called Elevate. So here on the project, I'm going to call this Elevate because that's my project name. And here my project again, I'm just going to say Elevate. So we need to point our Celery instance to our Django web application. This is how we're actually going to point directly to it. Okay, so to give you the basic rundown here of what's going on, is this code from Celery basically allows Celery to communicate with our Django web app. So of course, what we need to do to ensure that communication is we need to make sure that it's pointing to our application, that we are always importing Celery. So this is why it's important to have installed that Celery module or package per se. And what's going to happen also is we are going to load all the task models from our registered app. So it's going to discover all of our tasks. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make use of the links app. So it's going to then load this task module, which we're going to create in links here. So we're going to create a few Celery tasks here in our app here. So my app is links, and here this Celery, this is kind of like a celery.config file, you could say, and it's going to discover those tasks and help to run it for us. And of course, it's going to bind it and pass in a request as well. All right, so that is basically the rundown. Okay, so make sure you've got that in place. Next thing that we need to do is here by our init.py file here, we will need to adjust and modify this with the code from Celery. So all we can do is scroll down, and here you can see we have a init.py sort of code here just below this code that we just pasted in. So we're going to do the same thing here. We can copy this here and paste it in our init.py file under our project's init.py. Remember, this is within settings.py, so don't get confused as to where to paste this in, and add that in. You don't need to make any changes in here. Okay, so this is just going to make sure, as the comments say, that the app is always imported when Django starts. So we can make use of shared tasks, which in other words is Celery's way of creating a decorator and running tasks for us. All right. So that's the last thing that we need to do with Celery. All right, so make sure that you've got that all in place. Right, so the next thing that we can do is we can go ahead and apply these migrations while they're already sitting here. So I'm just going to stop my server here and zoom in. So I'm just going to say Python manage.py, make migrations. Okay, fine. And then we can just say Python manage.py migrate. So we just want to migrate all the database files. We don't have any issues or anything like that. So go ahead and migrate them. Just be sure to, of course, turn on your server after you're done with that. So go ahead and run your server. Okay, there we go. Let me zoom out. And there we go. So make sure your server's on. And what we can do now is we can actually close this documentation. Now we can refresh, and we can see our application is still working. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up a task broker, as I mentioned earlier on. So our task broker is basically going to house the list of tasks. So when we request or call for a task in our Django web application, the task will be sent to the Celery server. And then the Celery server is going to send these tasks to the task broker and put it in a queue. And then the task is going to wait there until Celery is requesting for it. So a very quick and easy way to do this is to make use of Railway and create a Redis instance. So you just want to head over to railway.app here. Now don't worry, like I said, I'll put all the links in order in the description below. And what we can do is we can go ahead and say start a new project. And you can go ahead and just say provision Redis right here. Okay, so just going to provision a Redis instance for us. Okay, now what we can see here is that this is a temporary project, okay, and it will be deleted in a day. Okay, so we can literally go ahead and claim it if we wish, okay, but I'm just going to keep this very short and very simple for you, okay, just to show you how it's working here. So do bear in mind it is 24 hours roughly. So what you can do here is you can just go ahead and click on your Redis instance here. Okay, so bear in mind this is free, so you will have this Redis instance here for free. Of course, if this runs out, what you can do is you can just go ahead and create another one after the time has passed, okay, and you can go on from there. So we have our Redis instance here running, and what you can do is you can go ahead and say connect. And here you'll see the Redis CLI command and the Redis connection URL. So I just want to zoom in here for you actually. Let's zoom in. And it's scrolled down, and here you'll see the Redis connection URL. Okay, so we're going to make use of this and connect it to our application. But before we can do that, we need to set up our variables in settings.py before we do this. Okay, so we can head over to our Django app, close the files here, head over to settings.py, and you can go to the bottom of the file if you'd like. It's really up to you. And here I'm just going to put in comments here, Redis configuration. Okay, so we're making use of a Redis instance here, and the three variables that we need are as follows. So the first one is Celery underscore broker underscore URL. So this is the URL that's pointing to our task broker, so our Redis instance. Then we need to say Celery underscore accept content. And the content that we want to accept will be in JSON, and I'm going to make use of this in a list format. Okay, then the last one will be Celery underscore task underscore serializer. So we want to also, of course, serialize this data in JSON, but in this case, we don't want it to be in a list format where we accept the content. We just want to keep it in regular JSON here. So make sure you've got these three variables in place. Now your server may stop, but that's fine. Just go ahead and rerun it again, and everything will be good as it should be. So just go ahead and rerun it. There we go. So I'll go through it again. So make sure you have the Celery broker URL, you have Celery accept content, and you have Celery task serializer. So the spelling is very important. Now for the URL here, you can literally go ahead and copy it right down here. So have a look at my screen. So I can't really scroll down, unfortunately. I can maybe zoom out here to give you clarity. So down here you have Redis connection URL. Here is the URL for you. Go ahead and copy that code. And here under the broker URL, you can go ahead and copy that. Okay, so there you have it. There we go. So this is the URL that we connected to. Of course, I'm going to have to delete this afterwards, but you know that's how we can go ahead and do that. So now you're connected to a Redis instance, and that will connect to your Celery server once we actually get it up and running. So make sure you've got that in place here. Okay, so that's what we need to do. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to start getting Celery up and running. All right, so let's head over back to our application. We can close settings.py and just make sure, of course, everything's working fine on that end. All right, so let's go ahead and create a task. Our first task will consist of a basic sleep function. So what we need to do is create a file in our app. So our app is called links in my case, and we need to create a file here called task.py in this directory. So I'm going to right click on the folder link, say new file, and I'm going to go ahead and call this tasks.py. Perfect. So the first thing that we need to do, I'm just going to add some lines here, is we're going to need to go ahead and import the shared task function. Okay, so this is basically a decorator that we can attach above our designated tasks, so our functions. So I can just say from Celery, import shared underscore task. Next thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and import the sleep function. So I'm just going to create a basic function, okay? And we will need to go ahead and import sleep here. So I'm going to go ahead and say from time import sleep. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and actually create our task. So here I'm just going to say shared task, so that will be the decorator. And down here I'm just going to say def, and I'm going to create a function here with def. So I'm going to call this sleep time, and I'm going to pass in total time as sort of like a placeholder for an argument. So I'm going to add that in. Then I'm going to go ahead and make use of this sleep module that I imported. So I said function earlier, I mean module. So we can make use of the sleep module. And I'm just going to put in total time. And we're not going to do anything here, so I'm just going to say return none. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to, it should be a capital N there, excuse me. So the reason for making a sleep function is because we will be testing Celery's capabilities. So if, for example, we create a sleep function that waits for 10 or 15 seconds normally, in Django, we're going to wait 10 or 15 seconds while we wait to request that view. However, with Celery, it should be almost immediately, since Celery is asynchronous. So what we can do is go ahead and open up our views.py. All right, and we are going to change this up a bit. So as of this moment, what we can see is we can see hello world, and our server is running. So if we go ahead and refresh, everything's still fine. Now we are going to go ahead and import our sleep time function here, okay, from tasks. So what we can do is go ahead and just add it in. So I'm going to say from.tasks. So tasks is in the same directory, so we can just say dot, and we can go ahead and say import sleep time. Like so. Okay. Then in our view, we can call our function and set the sleep total time to 15 seconds. So what I'm going to do is here in our view, I'm going to say sleep time and set it to 15 seconds. Now, this is our argument, okay, which is taking place of this total time here. So this is sort of our placeholder, okay, that we are making use of, and here is the argument that we're passing in. Now, these 15 seconds is going to pass in, of course, through this task here that we have set up. All right. Now, before we actually run this and actually test it, I just want to change the response to something more relatable, something like I am about to wake up. Okay, very simple. Now, this isn't going to actually work with Celery just yet, but this is how we would create a task. Now, for this to actually work with Celery, we will need to make use of a Celery server. We need to set up the Celery server or Celery instance. But I'm just going to show you how it works in Django alone without Celery, how to make use of a task in Django. So essentially, we're not going to get any of those added benefits with it being asynchronous. It's going to take a delay of 15 seconds. Well, not a delay, it's going to take 15 seconds. So let's demonstrate this. So let's refresh. And as we can see here, it's taking time. It's going to take 15 seconds until we are able to see this new response which says, I am about to wake up. So let's just wait for this. It will take some time, but this is a good test. So we can see I'm about to wake up. That response was sent, and we can see it's working fine. Now we need to make use of a Celery server in order to actually utilize this task properly. Okay, so this is a basic idea of what we are trying to do. All right, so make sure you're up to here at least so far. So now we need to actually set up and start our Celery server. Now, to keep it short and sweet, I'm just going to use a CMD on Windows for this. Okay, since we are testing, I'm going to keep it very basic and light for you guys. However, for those of you that are a bit more advanced, you're more than welcome to make use of a Linux server. So you can make use of Ubuntu or Debian, etc. It's really up to you. It really depends on what you want to do. So you can go ahead and make use of that. Just make sure that you at least have the Redis and the Celery package installed on your distribution. So make sure you've got that all set and ready to go. But let's get started and do this in the CMD. So effectively, our Python server, our Django application, is running in the Visual Studio Code terminal here by Python manage.py right here. So try and envision this part, this terminal here for the Django application. Now we're going to set up our server in the CMD for Celery. So what you can do is just search for your CMD. Go ahead and open that up. Okay, let's just adjust this accordingly. Okay, like so. So make sure you've got this in place. Now let's just clear this up a bit. And we're going to say cd desktop. And I just want to head over to the virtual environment of my project like we have in Visual Studio Code. So I just want to set this up accordingly. So let's head over to dev and turn on our virtual environment. So we're doing the exact same thing as we've done earlier. Head over to elevate, and there we go. So now what we want to do is we want to actually start up our Celery server. So we can say Celery -a and then elevate. So we need to specify here our project name. So in my case, it is called elevate because that is the folder above which my settings.py file is situated underneath. Now you can go ahead and set elevate and then space, say worker, and then -l info. Now the reason for saying worker is because it's going to go ahead and evaluate the celery.py file that we made use of in this init.py file. That's why it was important earlier on to specify that we are making use of our project here, our project name that we specified it here, because Celery can then pinpoint and look for the Django application itself. So that's why we need to add worker. And of course, info, we just want to get some basic information along with our Celery instance. Once we run it, we'll get some extra details. So let's go ahead and press enter and start our Celery server. So there we have it. It's running fine. It's connected. Great. So we can see that's working perfectly as it should. Okay, great. So we can see we have two tasks. We have elevate.celery.debug_task, and we have links.task.sleeptime. So we can see that is working as it should. All right, great. Right, so the first task here, elevate.celery, that is effectively running this task here. So this is technically a configuration file, but Celery counts this as a task. Now the second one is a task we actually created. So it can actually see that we have created a task here that we've scheduled here to run. Although we're not actually running it just yet, I'll show you how you can actually schedule it to run and actually invoke the Celery server, how to make use of it. So this is the task that we just created right here. Okay, so I just wanted to give you clarity on that. Okay, so everything's running here fine. So make sure you see the bottom line. So it will say Celery at and then your actual laptop. Now do bear in mind this here. Okay, so don't worry about this. This just basically means that we are running with debug equals to, let's head over to settings.py. That means that debug is set to true. You can of course change it to false if you wish, but this isn't going to cause any errors or any problems, okay? This is just a warning. So just make sure you have this in mind. All right, so not to worry. So let's actually go ahead and test this further. Right, so now we can officially go ahead and actually run our task properly now that we actually have our Celery instance running. All right, so all that we want to do is head over to views.py, and to invoke a Celery server to actually receive our tasks, what we need to do is for each task that we make use of in our view here, we need to say .delay. Okay. Now I'm just going to add in a comment here for you to bear in mind. So .delay is going to invoke our Celery instance to receive tasks. So we can just say .delay, and we already have a parentheses here with our argument. That is because, of course, we have our placeholder for total time. But in each normal case, you will just have .delay with your parentheses. So that's how you can invoke your Celery instance. So we've invoked it. Now what you can do is you can go ahead and restart your server here in Django. So in VS Code terminal, go ahead and rerun your server. Great, so that's running fine. Head over to your Celery server, and we can see everything's set and ready to go. And what you want to do now is you want to actually go ahead and actually test this out. Now, we can actually change the text here just to prove that it's working. So here I'm just going to change this HTTP response to something like task was received. Just like so. Just rerun your server, there we go. And now we can actually test this out. So let's see how it works. So let's refresh. Okay, and there we go, task was received, and you can see it's much faster, and the task was received in a really quick way, and that indicates to us that Celery actually received our task. So if we head over here to our server now, we can now see that that task was received as it shows here. So Celery received that task. Okay, so this is how you can schedule tasks and how you can actually go ahead and receive them. Okay, so this is how you would go ahead and do just that. All right. Now, this is one way in which we can do it. So we only went ahead and created one task. But you're probably wondering, okay, I've done one task. Now, well, how about we do something a bit more involved? So that is the main part of what we are trying to achieve. We want to actually send emails, okay, with Amazon SES, for example, any SMTP server that you can think of, and we actually want to send emails and configure that as a shared task. All right, so that's what we want to try and do now. So that's the next step that we need to follow. Okay, so now we're going to make use of Amazon SES for sending and receiving emails. So what we need to do first of all is we need to install the AWS CLI. Now I do have a fully featured video on Amazon SES, which you can refer to for extra guidance, but just for clarity, I want to put everything together, so we are going to overlap with my previous video as well. We'll be going to make use of it in Celery, so it's going to be applicable in this case. But of course, I will attach that link to that previous video, and you can refer to it for extra background knowledge. But I'll cover pretty much most of the things in that video anyway. So what you want to do is go to Google and type in AWS CLI install. So we want to install the AWS CLI so we can actually communicate with AWS programmatically, because we are going to be using Amazon SES, which stands for Amazon Simple Email Service. So let's search for that. We want to click on the first link, which is installing or updating the latest version of the AWS CLI. So we can go ahead and open that up. Okay. Now don't worry, like I said, I will attach the links in the correct order as I progress throughout the video, so you don't need to worry about those fine details. I will attach this link in the description below. So you can scroll down and you can choose your operating system, Linux, Mac OS or Windows. So I'm going to choose Windows. And if you scroll down here, it says install or update the AWS CLI. So all we need to do here under number 1 here, we can just click here and we want to download this AWS CLI MSI installer. So click on that. It's going to show down here on the left. So let's just wait for this to download and then we can start the installation process. Now it can take quite a while, so let's just wait for that and then move on with the next set of steps. Okay, so let's just wait for it to download. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video, and once it's downloaded we can move on to the next step. Right, so let's open this up and open it. Okay, it's going to prepare to install, so it's just going to compute the space requirements. So let's wait for that to be computed. Right, so now we can press next, accept the terms, say next, and next again, and we can install the AWS CLI now, so we can go ahead and say install. Okay, now of course this is an optional step. If you've already done it, you can of course ignore this part. So just go ahead and set that up accordingly. Okay, so let's wait for this. Now, something I do want to mention, your screen may have blurred in the moment that it was busy computing the space requirements. Just don't worry about that. Just make sure you press yes, and then it will just continue installing and setting up the AWS CLI. So just bear that in mind. So don't worry or be afraid of what happens there. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. So let's just wait for this to install, and then we can go ahead and verify that it has indeed been installed. All right. And there we go. So we can now see that the AWS CLI is installed. We can just go ahead and say finish. And there we go. So make sure you've got that in place. If you want to verify it, we do have our Celery instance here running, so we can quickly open another CMD. And all you need to do is type in here AWS --version. And we should be able to see the AWS CLI. There we go. So make sure that this is in place, so the AWS CLI. If that's all set, we are ready to go. All right. So make sure you've got that in place. All right. All right. So the next thing you should do is log into your AWS account. So make sure that you have an AWS account. What I can do is I can also add in a link there to help you to get started with setting up an account. So once you're here on your dashboard, we're going to make use of two services. The first one is IAM. So this is going to allow us to go ahead and make use of an IAM user. So we can actually programmatically access AWS from Django. And then we want to use Amazon SES, and this is Amazon Simple Email Service, which we'll use for sending and receiving emails. There we go. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to assume those of you that are watching that you don't know how to create an IAM user. Some of you are probably aware of how to do that. If you are, of course, you can skip to the next set of steps. But if you're not sure of how to do that, let's try that together. So head over to IAM. Okay. So I just like to bookmark them. So as you saw earlier on, I just went ahead to bookmark it. So let's head over to IAM. Now I do have quite a few users here. So let me go ahead and show you. So what you can do is you can click here on the left here for users. And you can go ahead and create a new user. Now I do have a full video on IAM and the best principles, etc. I'll also add that in the description. So it's quite a lot of things. I must just remember them. So I'm just going to show you a quicker way to do it. So we can go ahead and say add users. Okay. Okay, and we can just add a username. So this user, I'm just going to say, what am I going to say? I'm going to say one time. I'm just going to say CWD user 1. Okay. So choose a username, and you can scroll down here and make sure you enable an access key. So programmatic access, enable programmatic access so that we can generate an access key to access AWS from Django. And you also want to have a password enabled so you can actually access this AWS Management Console. Make sure you scroll down and you want to choose custom password. So enter in a password here. Okay. And here under require password reset, just uncheck that box. We don't want to have to reset our password. So just make sure you have these all selected. So we want to generate an access key, so we need programmatic access. We also want to ensure that we're able to access the management console on AWS and set it to a custom password. Remember to keep your username in mind. So I have CWD user 1. You can select whatever user you want. Now we can go to permissions and just say never. And now we can go ahead and attach existing policies directly. So I'm going to assume you haven't got a group or anything, so we can go ahead and do it this way. So attach existing policies directly. And first of all, we want to have administrator access. So you can just check the box there. And as soon as you check it, it automatically saves it. So you don't need to worry about it disappearing while we search. So I'm going to say IAM user, and then we have change password. So you can check that as well. And the last one is if we type in, of course, SES. We want SES full access, so we don't want to be limited by making use of Amazon Simple Email Service. So make sure you check that as well. So 3 things to check: administrator access, IAM user change password, and also Amazon SES. Now, once you're happy with that, you can say next, and you can go to tags. We don't need to set a tag. This is optional. We can go to review, and just double check you've got everything set. So you should have a unique username. Okay, you need to have programmatic access, so we can generate an access key, and also AWS Management Console access. You can set the console type to custom, very important, and make sure you have these 3 permission policies, very important. So administrator access, IAM user change password, Amazon SES full access. So make sure you have the following. Once you're done with all of this, you can go ahead and say create user. Okay. And here we go, we have our user set. So you can either download your access key and your secret access key by downloading the .csv file, or you can save the access key and secret access key to a notepad. So I'm going to do it by a notepad, very simple, but just keep it safe, never share it with anyone or anything. So I'm just going to set mine up. So AK for access key, just going to copy that, paste that in, and the secret access key, I'm going to call that SAK, secret access key. Copy that, So I'm just going to copy my access key. There we go. And that's fine. We can now go ahead and say close. So make sure you've copied it properly. And there we go. So that is our new user. Okay. So I'm assuming that you're making use of a root account. So you can now check that that user was created. So CWD user 1 in my case. Now what you can do is you can actually go ahead and log out. But before we do that, you want to head over to your dashboard. And the important thing is you need to remember your account alias. So in my case, it's called inlichting CWD. So I'm going to edit mine. Yours will probably show your account the first time. So I'm just going to say CWD. I think that's fine. So just CWD. It already exists. That can happen. CWD 96. Okay, there we go. So you can go ahead and update your account alias. This is quite important. So make sure you write all of this down, such as your username, your password, and your alias. These are very important. So I'm actually going to set mine all here. So let's put mine here. So account alias. So mine is CWD96. My username. Okay, I had CWD user 1. And then my password. Put some stars. So make sure you've got everything set and ready. So I just want to close this. I just want to double check the username. So if you're in doubt, just check your username. CWD-user1. Yep, it's good. Okay, so make sure you've got all that in place and that you have your account alias. Now you can sign out. Okay, and you can, of course, sign in again. So this is, of course, the page where you can actually go ahead and sign up for an account on AWS. So I will link you to the AWS website. So go ahead and choose log back in. And add in those credentials. So, of course, we had our account alias. So our account alias is effectively our account ID. So if you see it showing account ID, that is your account alias as it stipulates there. So go ahead and enter in the details. So you will have them. You'll have your account ID, your username, and your password. So go ahead and add that in accordingly. Right. So once you've entered all that information, go ahead and sign in. Okay, so let's sign in. Okay, there we go. So we have some things here. We can just, I just remove all these widgets. So it's quite messy. You can just click on the 3 dots and just say remove widget. And remove. It's quite a lot. All right, there we go. So we've got our IAM user all set and ready to go. And we can now see that we logged in with that user, so we can see CWD-user1 at CWD96. So that would be our account alias and our IAM username. Now we can head over to Amazon Simple Email Service. And like I said, if you want some more information on SES, I do have a video explaining that in full detail. So I do go in a little bit more detail. So now we want to send our first email. And to do this, we need to create something called a sender identity. So you can either set this up with a domain or an email address, okay, in order to send emails through Amazon SES. Now we're going to make use of email addresses. So I've got 2 open. So my first one, x96x@gmail.com. And incognito, I have another one here because you can't have 2 Gmail accounts open on 2 tabs. And this one, of course, is just codemaster809@gmail.com. So I have 2 emails. This is going to be my to address, and my from address is going to be this one here. And I need to verify both of these in Amazon SES. So the thing is, when you start with Amazon SES, you use the SAN mode by default, which means you can only make use of email addresses verified on SES separately. So we're going to verify this as the from address, and this one here as the to address. Okay, of course, this doesn't make sense in a production world, in a real environment. So in a real environment, you need to make use of production access. I will mention at the end briefly about that, where you can send an email from basically any email address to any email address. So from any email address from and to any email address. But when we're using the sandbox mode, we need to verify 2 emails here. And we can only send from and to these emails since they are verified send identities. And that's what we need to do. We need to create these identities via an email address. So let's do that. So create identity, and we're going to do email address. Now, if you have a domain name, of course, you can do it under the domain name with your set email, but we're just going to do it very simple. So enter the address. So my first one, let's do this. So we need to verify this one here. Do bear in mind your region here. So we are making use of the Ohio region in US East 2. So do bear that in mind. We can scroll down and create an identity. Okay, so it's going to say here we need to verify ownership of this email. So a verification link will be sent. So head over to that email, open the link that you get, and verify it by this long elongated link here. Okay, so there we go. We verified this email. So we can now send emails from this address, and we can see here a little bit about it, and we are in the sandbox environment. So you can close this, and you can actually delete that email if you wish. Okay, so what we'll need to do is we can actually refresh this page here, and you should be able to see that this is verified. So there we go. This email is verified as one sender identity. So we can go back to configuration verified identities, and this will be used as our from address. So we have one verified. Let's verify the one that we have here in incognito. So this is my second one. So this will serve as my to address. So we can say create identity, email address, enter that email. I'm going to go to incognito, copy this one here, add that in, scroll down, and create the identity. So a very simple process. Now we need to verify it since an email was sent to it. There we go. We can see it was sent by AWS. Go ahead and click on the long elongated link, and we can verify this email. It's been verified. Great. So we can now send email if we want, but I'll use this as the to address. So we can go ahead and close that, and we can delete this email. That's fine. Head on back, refresh the page. So we literally just did the same thing twice. So this is actually good practice for you guys. And we can see it's verified. Head over to verified identities, and you can now see that we verified those two emails. Perfect. Now, I actually might as well mention it now while we're here. If you actually want to go into a production environment, so this is in the sandbox testing environment, okay, you can go to account dashboard, and you can request production access. If you want more information, of course, you can open up this link here, and it's going to give you advice as to how you can move outside of the Amazon SES sandbox. And this is what I meant here early on, that you can only send mail to verified email addresses and domains, okay, to the Amazon SES mailbox simulator. So that's what we're doing. That's why we needed to create under verified identities two identities that are verified by Amazon SES. So you can only send and receive from these emails. That's why you can make use of something called production access to actually move out of the sandbox. So do bear this in mind. Okay, I will also add this in the link below for you. So this will allow you to send an email from, for example, Gmail to Hotmail, Outlook, etc., or Outlook to I don't really know many emails, Hotmail, etc. Okay, so you'll be able to send to any email address basically only when you request production access to actually move out of the sandbox. But we're doing the sandbox, we want to keep it very simple. Okay. Right, so that was quite a bit. So let's actually now configure our email backend in Django. So we can head over here, head over to settings.py, scroll to the bottom, and down here we can just, I'm just going to add a comment, say email configuration. So we need to set a few things. Right, so make sure you got everything set as before, and then now we're going to set the configuration. Right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to type in AWS _access _key _ID. Right. Next, you want to go ahead and set AWS _secret _access _key. So we'll just set the variables first, And now you just want to add in your access key and your secret access key. So I already have them here. So here's my access key. Paste that in there. My secret access key. Paste that in there. All right, great. So make sure you've got that all set up. Now you want to set your email backend. And I'm going to set that to Django underscore ses dot ses backend. Right. Now we need to set AWS underscore ses region name. So remember, that's what I mentioned earlier on. Wherever you set up your verified identities, double check where you set it in. So I set mine in Ohio, which is US East 2. Let's head on back. And you want to set that up. So it's US East 2. Now you want to set your region endpoint. So we're going to say AWS underscore ses region endpoint. And this is going to be email.us-east-2.amazon.aws.com. So this is going to be your region endpoint. So this is going to correlate to wherever your region name is, and email dot here. Let me scroll there. And .amazon aws.com is going to be the same. Only difference is this part here, which is based on your region name. So make sure you've got everything set and in place. So remember, it's very specific with names. So make sure you've got this all set and ready. Great. So I just want to clear the terminal. And we do need to go ahead and make use of a package. So we need to actually go ahead and install a package. So that's something important that we need to do. Right. So the package that you need to install is Django SES. So you can head over to PyPI and look for Django SES. So this is the Django email backend for Amazon Simple Email Service. Go ahead and copy that. And here, what you can do, I'm just going to zoom in. You can go ahead and just install that package. Make sure you're in your virtual environment here and install that. Okay. It's going to install a few things here, so it should be relatively quick. So let's just wait for that. Okay. So let's just wait for this to install, and then we can move on to the next set of steps, of course. And there we go. Perfect. So pip list. Let's double check we have SES. Of course, it did also install a couple of other packages along with it, but let's see if we have at least Django SES. So double check that you have that package installed. And once you're fine with that, you can just run your server just to make sure everything's running fine and that we don't have any issues whatsoever. Okay, that's good. Let's zoom out. All right. Perfect. So we've got everything set and ready to go. Now, the final thing we're going to do is we're going to now go ahead and create another task. And this task, of course, is going to be an email task that we want to go ahead and send. So that is the next thing that we actually want to go ahead and do. Right. So let's actually go ahead and create our email task here. So I'm just going to move this a bit lower, this console. So let's get started. So since we are sending an email, we're going to make use of the send mail function in our task.py. So make sure you're in task.py. And right here, I just want to say from django.core.mail import send mail. So we need to make use of this send mail function. And now right down about here, what we can do, we can say at shared task and create our function. So I'm going to call it def send email underscore task. And we can leave that as the empty parentheses. And what I'm going to do here is I just want to stop the server here. Okay, it's just going a bit wild there. I want to go ahead and make use of sleep again and say 15, just to make it seem a little bit more interesting. You don't have to add this. It's really up to you. I just want it to be a bit more of a demonstration for you guys. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to say send mail. We're going to make use of the send mail function. Now, this takes in 4 parameters. The first one is going to be the subject. So I'm going to say here Celery task success. Then it's going to be the message itself. And we're going to say this is a test message, a comma. And I'm just going to actually Press enter here just to have some space. The next one is going to be the from address. So the email that I'm sending from, that I verified, is this one-time x96 email here that I'm going to be sending from. So what I'm going to do here is going to say one-time x96@gmail.com. Let me just double check that email. Copy that. I just want to copy that in. I'm going to copy it in rather. And the next one is going to be the to address. Where are we sending to? So we need to actually go ahead and make use of a square parentheses, square bracket here. And this is going to be the to address. So the to address I had here in incognito mode. So I'm going to copy that. Add it in here. Now, of course, it's really up to you how you want to make use of sending emails, how you want to do it. If you just want to use Gmail or something else, it's really up to you. This is just the way I think is fairly easy. And remember at the end to add a comma. Okay, so that is our send mail functional set. So the subject is going to be Celery task success. The message is going to be this is a message. And then, of course, we have one-time x96@gmail.com. This is, of course, going to be our from address, where the email's coming from. And this is going to be our to address, so codemaster809@gmail.com. It's going to be the to address. Now, do bear in mind, these emails aren't random. This is what we verified under our verified identities. So remember, like I said, if you actually want emails from random emails, so Hotmail to Gmail, Gmail to Hotmail, etc., you need to request for production access here, and you can read this guide here by this link here that you see on my screen for more information, which will also attach in the description as I mentioned earlier. So please bear that in mind. Okay, so this is all set and ready to go. We can just go ahead and say return none. We can go ahead and just do that, that's fine. So now what you can do, just make sure you turn on your server here in Django. There we go, it's running. Great. Okay, now what we need to do now is, we can minimize this. Now, since we're adding a new task, okay, we are going to have to stop this server. Now, what you can do is you can either press Control-C on your keyboard, and you may need to press it a few times to force this to stop, because when you add in a new task, you need to start your server again from scratch. Now, I'm just going to do this the easy way, okay? You can, of course, try and cancel it by pressing Control-C. It's up to you, your choice. So I'm going to do it from scratch just because I want something clean and fresh here. And what we're actually going to do is we are going to go ahead and actually start the server from scratch. But before we actually do that, we just need to set up our view. So here under our views, what we want to do is import our send email task. I believe it's called, let's see what we called it. Yeah, it's called our send email task. So we want to import that. We're not going to use the sleep time one anymore, and we're going to make use of the same view. So we are going to just do some restructuring here. So we're going to import the send email task. And here we're going to say send email task, and .delay is going to actually help us to actually invoke our Celery instance that we have here. So that is what's going to happen here. So we're going to import that send email task from tasks here. So we're going to make use of this task, import it in here, and .delay is going to invoke each time we want to make use of Celery. That's what this function is for. Is very, very important. So make sure you always add it in. Here we can change the response to say the email was sent. Task complete. Okay. Great, so make sure you've got that all set in place. Now we can actually start this from scratch. So let's actually get this new task. So now technically we should have 3 tasks now. Although we're not using sleep time anymore, we are using send email task. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So I just want to start from a clean slate here. Let's go ahead and close this. Right, so let's head over to our CMD. Let's go ahead and just make this clear for you guys. And we want to head over to our desktop, head over to dev, and then activate our virtual environment. Head into our project. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start our Celery instance. Now we're going to use slightly different code in this case because when it comes to emails, we may need to adjust the code slightly. And I think it's best practice in the future to use the code that I provide here. So what I can do, I can pin this in the comment section so you can have it as a guide for your future Celery instances. And I'd really recommend rather using this version. I did use a very basic version of code earlier on, but I think this one will be a bit better. So I'm just going to paste this in and I'll explain what's going on here. So what we're doing here in this line of code here, we're doing the same thing. We are also going to say Celery and then -a elevate. So that elevate is referring to my project. So you're going to reference your project as well again. You're going to, of course, bring up the info page so you can see all the information of all of the Celery processes working. Now there are a few alternatives here to the code: without gossip, without mingle, without heartbeat, off air, pull, and solo. So the rest of this code here in the attachment here is going to clear everything of any issues or any clarity that we have behind the scenes. So this is going to, you could say, sanitize our Celery instance and just clear it of any possible errors. This is also something that needs to be used for the email because there is updates within Celery, so we need to make use of the following parameters just to sanitize our code and to get it all in Scratch. Right. So now that everything will be sanitized correctly and that our clocks will be in synchronization, let's get started. So we can go ahead and press enter. So essentially from after you've gone ahead and completed this side project here, okay, I would recommend making use of this code from now on for all of your Celery projects, just as a baseline and a good reference. Okay, so we can see here already what the difference it makes. It clears all of this, all of these processes that we see here that we may not want to see, and just takes away all of that clutteredness that we have that we don't need and puts it way behind the scenes to just make it a bit cleaner and a bit easier for us to just focus on. And also, like I mentioned, it does help with some synchronization to just get everything all set and ready with the threading, etc. Okay, so enough of that. We can now see we have our tasks running. So debug task, our send email task, and our sleep time task. So if we head over here, we can see we have our tasks here: sleep time, send email task, everything set and ready to go. And I just want to elaborate. I will put this in the chat here, this code, so you don't need to worry about that. I will make that available for you. Okay, so everything's ready and we can actually test this out. So let's just evaluate. So we are going to send an email that has a subject heading of Celery task success. This is the test message, will be the actual message itself. The email will be from oneTimex96@gmail.com and the email will be sent to codemaster809@gmail.com. This will be the view. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and import that send email task. And we're going to say send email task dot delay, which is going to allow Celery to receive our task itself. And then we're going to return a HTTP response that says the email was sent, task complete. Okay, so let's actually test this out. So here we are. So we were last on task was received. So let's go ahead and refresh. Do bear in mind that we did put a timer for 15 seconds, but because this is Celery and it's asynchronous, it will go relatively quick. So let's go ahead and reload the page. Okay, email was sent, task complete. Okay, let's check this out. We can head over to our Gmail right here. Let's see if it was received. So it might just take a moment. Let's actually check. If we press enter here, we can see that that task was received, which is perfect. So it may just take a moment for us to actually get that email. So let's just wait for that to be sent. So that may take a moment. Okay, there we go. So we can see there it succeeded. It took a while, it took about 18 seconds, and there we have it. So we can now see that this is one way in which we can make use of Celery to schedule tasks for us. We can see Celery task success. This is a test message from OneTimex96 via Amazon SES. and we can see it was from here and sent here. Okay, and we can also see we have a nice success message. Of course, it completed that task in 18 seconds, which is a really cool thing to see here. And of course, it returned none because we specified return none here. So we can see this is how we can make use of Celery to go ahead and create tasks. And in this case, we learned how to create a basic sleep time function based task and a send email based task. Okay, so we can see this is working perfectly as it should. All right, so I think that's it, guys. It's been a very long video, so I will attach everything for you in great order for you, so you'll have that all set and ready to go. But yeah, I hope this was of value to you and it helped you out. But yeah, thank you, guys. So that is that on Celery. We explored Celery. We also explored Redis as well, Amazon SES. A bit of AWS, IAM, so we really went over a lot of technologies, so that's a bit crazy. Okay, guys, so it's getting late for me, so I think that's it. But yeah, thank you, guys, and yeah, I hope this was of value to you. All the best. Thank you, as always, for the support.